Welcome into the Paul Kuharsky podcast. I'm Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com, part of the 440 Sports Network and brought to you by Zen Sports. Welcome in. Looking forward to talking about a lot that's going on with the Tennessee Titans, who wrapped up 2 days of joint practices with the Seattle Seahawks yesterday. We're going to talk about what unfolded at these practices, the status of some of the wide receivers, interesting comment on tight end leadership from Nick Vanette. Take a bunch of your voicemails and some questions in here as well. So come on in and let's get started. DeMarcus says he didn't get a text. It should be coming in a second here, popping through any second, but I'm glad you're here. Hey, Trey, DeMarcus, Dwayne, good to see you guys. So the main takeaway, or one of the main takeaways from these joint practices, was at wide receiver, where Calvin Ridley really got eaten up by Woolen. Sorry. This guy's 6'4", 210 pounds. He's a fifth-round draft pick in 2022. He had 6 interceptions as a rookie. We may not know as much about him as we should with him playing in the NFC. But opposite Devin Witherspoon, a first-round pick from 2023, fantastic player, really long at 6'4" for a cornerback, and fits kind of the Seattle mold of getting aggressive and relatively big. He's super big cornerbacks. He was dominant against Ridley the first day when I watched him. I think Ridley made 1 catch. He had 3 reps against him in one-on-one drills, caught 1 ball. And then I don't think he caught anything the rest of the day. Missed 3 targets in one-on-ones and wasn't very effective in 7-on-7 or in team. Wrote a lot about that. And he he dropped one in 7-on-7 where he wasn't covered by Woolen. Kind of fought the ball and beat it down to the ground with, I think it was a linebacker trailing him. 2 deep balls. One was probably a bad throw by Levis, but he still could have run harder to it. The first one, didn't run well to it. And afterwards he said, I just got to run full speed. Well, you get $50 million guaranteed and you're not running full speed at a training camp practice where it's hot. And where you're a guy who's built to run, I find that concerning. And I think Woolen got in his head, but, everything had been good about Calvin Ridley up until these 2 practices. Saw him walking away from the autograph line the second day when he didn't talk and said better. And he said a little, kind of said, these damn joint practices, something like that. Brian Callahan wasn't concerned with what he said or his performance, and it's not a federal issue by any means, but I thought the comments about not running hard were concerning. I don't know that premier wide receivers go out in joint practices where you're expected to show your best and you've got some pride going against a top corner from another team, a very good corner from another team, and you come back and you say you didn't run hard. That struck a bad nerve with me. Meanwhile, Treylon Burks, despite pulling up late in the first practice session with a calf cramp on a deep ball, was quite good through these 2 days. Again, I was watching the defense the second day, but all reports were that he's quite good the second day. And he was with Devin Witherspoon, who's, 6 feet tall, 185 pounds. And Burks is, the more physical receiver there. And he was the physical winner in that matchup, while Ridley was the physical loser in his matchup. So that's a positive development for Burks, a negative development for Ridley. You can just chalk it up to, matchups against the Seahawks, but I didn't find it particularly encouraging for Ridley. And, you could say it shows the potential downside of Ridley, also showed the potential upside of Burks, though Burks is still very much the number 4 guy when the Titans are at full strength. Also, Jaquan Jackson with Tyler Boyd out, still not working super high, but it was working with the twos and really made some plays. The first day, 2 relatively short passes into the middle of the field where he, caught the ball going full speed and ran away from the defense, maybe a 40-yard touchdown and a 75-yard touchdown. Really staking a claim. Titans have a lot of competition going on for that second slot guy behind Tyler Boyd, who was out these 2 days. And, I don't know, but we're going to talk more about wide receiver numbers later when I play a voicemail. But you've got Jackson, who's very much a slot, Phillips, who is very much a slot, Kinsey, who is very much a slot, and Kieris Jackson, who I was thinking, maybe had some hope of differentiating himself by being able to play outside. But Callahan pretty much said he's very much a slot. So you got 4 backup slot guys. How many slot guys are you going to keep? All of them cross-trained to be able to play everywhere. But everybody's got a primary talent and a primary spot. And that's a slew of slot guys. How many slot guys the Titans need? Not enough depth on the outside after Burks and NWI. I shouldn't say that. I mean, you got 4 outside receivers there, all of whom can obviously play inside. But the smaller inside guys in Jackson, Phillips, and Kinsey are not as good at going outside. And you got some issues there. You really would like to see this team with L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie on the field. Chidobe, was out there a little bit with the jersey on in sweatpants, which is the first time we've seen him in a long time. I would think he'd be close to returning next week when they're back on the field. It was supposed to be about a 2-week injury. And we're going on closer to 3 weeks, it feels like. So it'd be great to get him back. The defensive backs, the cornerbacks have been tested. We know they've got good depth there in Jarvis Brownlee. We know what Trey Avery is. He's gotten a lot of snaps. The 2 guys at the back end there on the outside in Tay Gowan and Robert Javier are not good football players. There's a big drop off there. So it'd be great to see them all the way back. Defensive line depth is now an issue. We'll get a little bit more into that later. Tracy Rocker, last time he spoke, kind of said it is what it is. Sounded like he'd like more, but that they'll roll with what they have. And I reported yesterday, Marlon Davidson, I wrote about the play on which he hurt his arm, torn biceps. They're expecting he's out for the season with that injury. Look, Marlon Davidson, no great shakes, but a depth guy. And the depth on the defensive line, not very good. Simmons, Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day, and after that, nobody that's proven. Keandre Coburn has been disruptive against twos, but we'll have to see where it goes from that. So those are some of my initial thoughts, and they pair well with kind of a summation from young Mr. Latham, and I wanted to share what he said after the second practice. Kind of about what he got out of the whole deal.
I mean, it's just time together. You know what I mean?
Except that that's Quandre Diggs. Here's Latham.
It's 10 out of 10. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, they got to see things that they haven't seen before. We got to see things we haven't seen before. We got to put a live action situations in, just competing. And, like I said, I mean, we played them this week, but, I mean, we're going against our own guys. We've been doing that since OTAs and in the spring. So it's like, what a guy does with his counter, first, second, third, fourth, fifth move, Going against these guys, I mean, it's not really – it's film on them, but it's not like we're game planning them for this practice, So we get a chance to really just go out there and compete.
He had a very interesting exchange with Leonard Williams. Again, I was watching the defense. Leonard Williams, with Latham's helmet off, apparently had his arm cocked back. ready to hit Latham in the face. Stopped himself, which is good development for everybody in terms of fines and suspensions and potential blood. Rand Carthon was out there at one point to stop a fight in a John Robinson-esque move. But calmer heads prevailed. Leonard Williams is really something to behold up close. He's got kind of a bigger version of Jadeveon Clowney's body. He is a longer dude than most interior defensive linemen, and he is a problem in that Latham was talking about facing Simmons every day, and he says Simmons is the best interior defensive lineman in the league, but said Williams can kick outside, and we don't see Simmons outside. Leonard Williams, a real problem. I'll take a look at a couple of your questions here, and then we'll get to some voicemails. Everybody retweet. Let's retweet, and we'll get some more people in here. I'll do the same. And if you're listening later or watching on YouTube, please like, rate, and rate, comment, all of that fine stuff if you can. Helps the cause. So appreciate your efforts on that front. Thank you very much. Trey says NWI continues. I lost him. NWI continues to improve since he said in Green Bay will keep making plays. Glad he's on this team. That crossover route was nasty. Yeah, he had a really nice play that, again, the Titans film crew that's out there continues to capture some amazing video. So how you doing, Nick D? Chris Flint jokingly says panic time. Barton Hanley, good to see you. What do you got here? Before Charles retired, he was hopeful about the depth at center. Do I see Brunskill working at right guard now? No, Brunskill's going to be the backup center and probably the swing interior lineman, the primary backup. And he and Rupsich are probably the two interior backups behind Skoronski, Cushenberry, and Dylan Radins, who I think is going to win that right guard position pretty easily. No, Logan, I'm not saying Burks is better than Ridley. And I know you're being funny there. Ridley actually shows up in games, Dixie says. Yeah, you have to show up in practices to show up in games. And if he showed up in a game against Seattle right now, there's no reason to believe that he would fare any better against the cornerback that he just struggled for in 2 practices. So, look, Calvin Ridley's a better receiver than the Titans have had in a long time. He's faster and he's shiftier. And I expect he's going to have a lot of success. But up until that practice, we were thinking, hey, man, this guy's going to just crush. And we just saw that if you've got a big physical cornerback who can run, there's a way to get in Ridley's head and to slow him down. So there's a dose of reality. Do I think Sharp, Spears you're talking about? Tajay Sharp, he's not getting a look with Phillips on the shelf with a hammy. First off, we don't know if Phillips is going to miss time or not. But again, I just listed off all the on-roster replacements. Tajay Sharp was at practice yesterday as a spectator. I don't think they're going to have him on the roster anytime soon. Burks caught a pass, got killed, and limped off the field. Yeah, he's fine. Robert says people still want to talk bad about Westbrook-Akine, but is there a much better wide receiver in the league? You don't know number 5 wide receivers in the league. That's kind of the whole point. They're insurance policies. I don't think there are a lot of rankings of number 5 wide receivers around the league. And it's nice that the Titans have a very good number 5 wide receiver, but they need him to be the number 5 wide receiver, and he's a good, reliable player who lacks speed and explosion. And I'm perfectly fine with them having 4 guys who are better. All right, let's go to our first voicemail here, which is from Russell, and he wanted to talk about Latham.
Hey, Paul, this is Russell Jones. I just wanted to call and just get you to try and tamper maybe my expectations on J.C. Latham. I thought today in the preseason game he showed fantastic talent. I thought his hands were great. His footwork looked excellent. He looked like a big guy on roller skates, and that's what you look for out of left tackle. And obviously, he's first-round pick, top 10 pick, and he looks like everything, you could have hoped for in this year's left tackle. Obviously, he's going to go through rookie growing pains, but I think there's a reason for excitement, and it seems to be justified in J.C. Latham. I just wanted to get your thoughts. Thanks, Paul.
Well, J.C. Latham had some terrific snaps in the preseason opener against the 49ers, Russell. I wouldn't say he's on roller skates. Being on roller skates is generally a bad thing. It means you're kind of flailing and easily pushed off balance. That's not the right way, I don't think, to characterize him. His good snaps were really good, and he looked like a big-time left tackle. Now, he had some snaps where he didn't set great, or he got was a little off, and he graded himself a C, and he took his issues straight to Bill Callahan and told Bill Callahan what he did wrong before Bill Callahan told him what he did wrong, which is a very mature approach. But the fact that he was so self-aware is very good. He's a very mature guy. He's developing a very good handle. He works very hard. He's the first guy out at practice almost every day, if not every day. And, I think there's no reason not to expect that he's going to be a good left tackle for them, who gets better week to week and lives up to the draft billing. I think they made a good pick there. They've got a good coach for him, and lot of reasons to be encouraged right now with him. So I would certainly be feeling good about him right now. We're not going to see him on Sunday, on Saturday. So it'll be another week. We'll see him a couple practices next week, and then we'll see him. In the finale at New Orleans. Yeah, that's good, Logan Brady. Tajay Sharp may as well look for Trey McBride too. Josh wants to know if I think we'll see a lot of packages with Pollard and Spears on the field together. Haven't seen indications of that. I don't know why people get so excited by this idea of having 2 running backs on the field together. I mean, you give the ball to one and the other one becomes useless. You're asking him to be a blocker, and I'd rather I think it's much more deceptive to make somebody cover a wide receiver or to have a tight end who's blocking. That's more useful than me. How big is the deception to see 2 running backs there and have to account for both? They're going to run shorter routes or they're going to take a handoff. So I'm not as intrigued by this as a lot of other people. Logan Grady says, imagine having the best wide receiver 1 in the league instead of bragging about wide receiver number 5. And I think that's absolutely true, though. For all of the time that the Titans have been just absolutely terrible at wide receiver, having nice depth is a big deal. Nick asks about wide receiver 3. Wide receiver 3 is Nick Vanette. There's not much question about that. And I was asking him about if he could believe that Josh Whyle was actually quiet last year, but he took it as quiet like recently, and that led him to an interesting place. So here's Nick Vanette on Josh Whyle having maybe a quiet day and what he sees as kind of the tight end's role on this team.
Yeah. He was just so tired, man. He's so tired. You lose a lot of breath when you talk all that shit. So, so that's when I stepped in for him. Someone's got to pick up the rifle, right? When a guy goes down. Man, we just try to bring the energy in the tight end room. That's something I always preach. I feel like we're the heartbeat. I feel like we're the heartbeat of the team in a way on the offense. We're the X factors, and it's like if we're not bringing energy, then who else is? So I think once we bring energy, everybody else kind of rises to the occasion, and that's when we get our best practices. That's when we compete at the highest level. So that's what we're going to continue to do. If we have to talk a little shit to do it, then that's what we're going to do, man. We're just trying to get each other better.
I hate to counter you, Nick, but if you're not bringing energy, who else is? Well, the guys who make the big money and the guys who make the big explosive plays are the guys who bring the energy. So Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Pollard, Spears, guys who have the ball in their hand more, not a blocking tight end. I mean, he had 5 catches the other day. But raise your hand if you're looking for the tight ends to be the guys that bring the Titans energy. Maybe it's good that they look at themselves that way, or maybe it's a little unhealthily delusional. I don't know. But I don't think there are many analysts who are watching this team on a regular basis, or many fans who follow this team the way all of you who are watching this do, who are thinking, when I look to measure the heartbeat of the Titans, I'm getting out the monitors for Wiley and Chig and Nick Vanette. I don't see it. I do not see it. And I'm guessing most of you also do not see it. So that was interesting, I thought. Let's get back to the voicemail line. If you're a member of paulkuharsky.com, you've got access to this number. You can leave me a voicemail at any time. And I take the best of the questions here and get them on the line. Focus wants to know about the running backs.
Hey, PK, this is Focus One. Quick question for you. I know Coach Mack always says keep your powder dry, but after that first preseason game, really interested to get your take on who is leading the way for RB3. I like what Haskins did. Chestnut had a big run. Smalls looked pretty good in limited action, but I know, we got a long way to go. But what's your take? Love to hear it. Great show. Love your content. Take care. Later.
Yeah, so Jabari Small's got no chance in this competition. It's Haskins and Chestnut. I came into camp thinking they could find a better back at the end of camp coming from somewhere. Chestnut is not a bad running back. He's running against – I like the fact that they used Haskins and Chestnut in combination the same way they used Pollard and Spears in combination. So they both worked with the twos, and they're probably both going to work with the twos at the start of this game on Saturday against Seattle. Look, Haskins is a very good special teams player. And, I tend to devalue special teams players because I think, good football players should be able to play good special teams. Chestnut's a better running back, I think. And so, we talked with Callahan about the choice here between, the third running back being a better running back when he's not going to be on the field very much as a running back, or the third running back being a better special teamer. And, that's the exact kind of call you're making as a front office and a coaching staff when you're cutting the roster down to 53. Haskins can run down the field and tackle a return man in a way that Chestnut just can't. I think you could probably get Chestnut to the practice squad. And if something happens to Pollard or Spears, you've got access to them. Doesn't make much sense to keep 4 because one of them is going to be inactive no matter what. Jonathan Merck, next question.
Paul, Jonathan Merck here. My question to you is, could you give us your take or comparison on this preseason game, this first preseason game under Callahan versus under the previous administration, and your take on attitudes, details, those kinds of things? I'm curious to get your opinion on what you saw that was different versus previous.
Well, I think Mike Vrabel and his staff were equally concerned with details. I think the attitude about preseason was different. If you look back to preseason game number 1 last year against the Bears, they put the starting offensive line out there, but Malik Willis started the game. Hassan Haskins started the game. Odakoya was the tight end. NWI and Chris Moore were the starting wide receivers. Preseason game number 1 for Brian Callahan. In his first game, everybody played two series on offense. It's a different attitude in terms of getting starters out there. Defensively last year, Weaver, Gibbons, Molden, Avery were the only guys you really heard of or cared about that played. Now, Simmons and Landry didn't play. L'Jarius Sneed and Cheeto didn't play, and I think Murray didn't play, right? So, but his intention was to play starters. And I think the biggest difference really was their feeling about winning. That game didn't mean anything. The 49ers, they didn't care, and they didn't really play anybody. And it was a close game score-wise, but the Titans wanted to win the game. And after the game, both Callahan and Will Levis were talking about they need to feel what it's like to win. They need to develop the habit of winning. They need to learn how to win. Vrabel didn't talk about those things in the preseason or consider it the least bit important, really, as don't most coaches. And I don't remember back to Vrabel's first preseason, but even then, I don't think he was thinking it was a very big deal. But also, he inherited a better team. He inherited a 9-7 team that had been to the playoffs. Callahan inherited a 6-win team out of a 17-game season that was not very good, and he's got many more new players that he needs to gel in whatever context he can get that in. So different deal for sure. We'll go back and see some of your questions here. Oh, I got a low battery thing, so I got to step away here for 1 second, make sure this plug is working. Excuse me. Talk amongst yourselves. Talk amongst yourselves. Yeah, that got unplugged from the wall socket. Very concerning. I would have hated to bow out under those circumstances. Cyrus Kane says, Hard Knocks final episode of the Giants offseason had the GM discussing that they thought Latham may have been in play for the Chargers over Alt. So some of the league was much higher on Latham. Well, it's also a team speculating, So how much insight into the Chargers do the Giants have? I mean, some teams, everybody's reading tea leaves there, right? Blake wants to know, why is Willis getting the start? Well, Willis hasn't gotten many second-team reps. And, he's put in some good work. He's looked good. They want to give him a chance to see what he looks like. It's a reward, basically. It's funny, the preseason. Playing in the preseason or getting a lot of time is punishment for established guys, and it's a reward for unestablished guys. So he gets to put some film out there. Willis has no chance of overtaking Mason Rudolph for the number 2 job. But here he gets a chance to go out and show the coaches, show the fans if his improvement has meant much. He's worked primarily with the threes, series here and there with the twos, but now he'll go against Seattle's twos with the Titans twos, and we'll get a look at him. It's not a huge deal. Here is an interesting question from Tall Texans. I've heard time and time again that the Titans have more talent but won't win more games. That makes no sense. Well, I think they win more than 6 games based on the talent, but I will say it can make sense in this regard. And I had this conversation with Chad Brinker at the owners' meetings. Takes a long time, can take a long time for a team with as much new stuff as the Titans have to gel. They got a lot of new starting players on both sides of the ball. They've got a new coaching staff, and they've got new systems. How quickly does that come together? We see it sometimes come together quickly for teams, and that's big. And that's why we see worst to firsts in the NFL. That's why we see the turnover of playoff teams that we see in the NFL. But also in some instances, it takes longer. And that's what Brinker was saying when I was kind of asking him what defines success this year, you know. And I think it's a legitimate thing from the Titans president of football operations to say, you know, to him, a lot of things key on how quickly things gel. And he knows some teams in their situation gel quickly and take off, and he hopes that's the case for them. But if it's not, it doesn't mean that it hasn't worked. It just means that the gelling takes longer. And so that's the answer to your thing. You could have more talent than you've had previously, but it could take a while. Like we saw, I chronicled the defense yesterday, you know, a big play made by DK Metcalf against Jarvis Brownlee and Condre Diggs right out of the gate. Well, it was probably a communication issue between Condre Diggs and Jarvis Brownlee. And we would say, well, they need to have that down by opening day and the first month and all of that. Well, you and I think so, and they surely think so. But there's something to be said for guys playing together over time. And I happen to have something here that'll play right into that with Condre Diggs, talking about that very kind of concept that it's going to take a little bit of time. Here he is talking about the secondary.
I mean, it's just time together. You know what I mean? It's literally time together and just spending time with each other, learning each other's personality. I'm an observer, bro. I observe everything, and I want to be able to see certain things. And you know, I talk to guys differently. You know, I know how to talk to people differently, and I get that. So I think for me, it's just be myself every day, so guys know me and feel comfortable be themselves.
The videos have fit seamlessly into the conversation today, as will this mention of Zen Sports, my sponsor. Go download their app, use the code TNPaul, and sign up for an account at Zen Sports. It's a great place to make your bets. You've got NFL futures now after you've seen some teams in the preseason. You get some feelings. It's a good time to bet over-unders like under on the Giants, who are not going to be good. That's one that I would bet. So you use the code TNPaul. You make a bet for $10 or more, and you get a free year's membership to paulkuharsky.com. Also, you can bet a lot more than $10 if you don't want the free membership, or if you do, you get a no danger first wager. So whatever you bet, up to plus 500 odds. If you win, you're in the money. That's an awesome way to build your account and take off at Zen Sports. And if you lose, you've got no worries because you bet no danger. And so you get your money back within 24 hours and you start again, maybe a little bit more carefully. But Zen Sports, they've been very good to me. You've been very good to me. Now you can be very good to them. And they will be very good to you when you use your excellent sports knowledge to win. Go to Zen Sports and use code TNPaul, and everything will go great. Donna Hale. Dear Paul, please join our group if you're a Tennessee Titans fan. We're not going to do that, Donna. She's inviting specific people. Donna, you got to chill out. Let's quiet Donna here. Let's see what we could do to quiet Donna. We don't want her up there. We just want to quiet her down. Sorry, Donna. You can go bill your audience somewhere other than bothering my audience. Latham in a scuffle early with Jeff. Latham in a scuffle with the Seahawks. Any concern that Latham may be a 15-yard penalty magnet like Lewan was early in his career? I don't see that. I think he's feisty. I see somebody responding to you here, Kenston, saying that's just camp stuff. Never was an issue in college. I'd need to see it happening in a game before anything happens. I think Jeff is, plays that line a lot. And I think the Seahawks are pretty undisciplined team from what I saw out there, who also push the edge. So I would look more for them, which is the issue. Kenston wants to know how they got footage of Schefter and Woj at the Springsteen concert and not me. I'm perfectly happy being anonymous at my Springsteen concerts, unless it's me and Springsteen. And then you can take my picture with them all you want. Was the offense bad yesterday? Kenston wants to know. Kenston, I don't recognize your name. I hope you're a member or becoming a member. Was the offense bad yesterday or just bad in the red zone drill that was emphasized yesterday? Look, offense has been up and down. I did not watch the offense yesterday. I think they made some plays. I don't think they got in the end zone very much. So, they got a lot of work to do still, for sure. But I think, the one thing that surprises me about the offense is how content they've been. And Callahan said this is largely situational on the first day to check down and to take stuff. And look, I'm not saying don't check down. I'm saying I'm surprised that they need to check down so much with the playmakers that they have. And I know Hopkins isn't out there and Boyd's not been out there for the Seahawks stuff. And maybe it's a way of covering for the offensive line to a degree and everything. But I thought there would be a little bit more aggressive going downfield a little bit more. So Davidson likely out for the year with a torn bicep, as reported by PaulKuharsky.com. Yeah, the voicemails are good. I want you guys to leave them all the time. Put it in your phone book and set it going anytime you have. The Simmons, I don't know where that video came from. If it was team film, it was pretty grainy, but it might have been team film. It most likely been team film that somebody leaked out there. Throwing Tomlinson was an incredible piece of film, and just went to show you how dominant he can still be. YouTube viewers, hit the thumbs up there. Hit the thumbs up. And again, retweet, like, follow, subscribe wherever you're watching, and help however you can help. Trey is a big fan of the voicemail line. I didn't get to him this week. He said he's been calling the voicemail line during the week when Random Thoughts hit. Great feature to the site at a great price. Appreciate that very much. Who's been the biggest surprise at wide receiver so far? Kane wants to know. I mean, I think Jackson's 2 days were very good, So he had the punt return during the game, and then he ran away from an entire defense twice in one practice for touchdowns on short throws. So talk about lack of explosive plays where the ball's thrown downfield. Well, you can make up for that with a short throw and a big run. And he certainly did that. So I think Jaquan Jackson is on the rise. And I think Kyle Phillips, is maybe being overlooked a little bit. Like you watch those one-on-one drills and red zone one-on-one drills, and the guy still makes a ton of plays. Can he stay healthy? Can he win some confidence in the return games? But again, when you get, let's get to the roster numbers question, and we'll get a little further into this. Let me go find that. Who was it that asked define roster number questions? Alas, it was Dwayne. He's also known as number one.
Paul, good morning. Hope this finds you well. This is Dwayne, known affectionately by you as number one. Wanted to ask a question on where you think the roster cutting down to 53, like the pressure points, like 7 wide receivers. Example, they keep 7. Where do they lose? Do they keep one fewer offensive lineman, one fewer safety, that type of thing? Where do you see the battles for the back end of the 53-man roster shaking out with the different positions? Thanks. Bye.
Dwayne is number one because he's the first guy that subscribed to the Paul Kuharsky All 22. Been with me all 7 years, as a lot of guys in the All 22 have been. But he's affectionately known as number one. These guys wanted to know their rankings, and at one point I went back and saw the order in which they subscribed. Look, 7 wide receivers to me is an issue at the start because we're going to run through them, all right? You got Ridley and Hopkins and Boyd and Burks and NWI. Those 5 are a lock. Now, where do you go for 6? Jaquan Jackson, I would say, is 6 right now, ahead of Phillips, but maybe that's tight. But the next guy you keep is Phillips, to me, which would be 7. But he's the 3rd slot receiver, and you're not going to play him outside much, and you're not going to play Jackson outside much, and you're not going to play Boyd outside much. So you're really clogged up in the slot. So to me, it makes it easier to keep 6 than 7. But if you kept 7, where's the spot coming from? Number one asks. Well, if you look at the roster construction the Titans had at the end of last year, they had 7 defensive linemen. Right now, it's hard to find 7 defensive linemen on the Titans with Davidson out with the bicep. Simmons, Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day, I think Coburn's a lock. Then you have Bohannon, McClendon, and Isaiah Eiton, who had a good one-on-one period I wrote about yesterday with 3 nice reps. It got held twice. That's 7 guys right there. Isaiah Eiton, to me, is more of a practice squad developmental guy. So I'd keep 6 there, be on the lookout maybe on the waiver wire. So I'd knock 1 off the defensive line. So you could get a 7th wide receiver there. Can you find a spot on offense? Well, it could be Malik Willis's spot, who could be a practice squad guy. 3 running backs, I think you got to keep, right? One of them's a special teamer. Now, last year they had 6 wide receivers, so you're looking to find a spot. 3 tight ends, got to keep. Now, last year they had 2 centers, 4 guards, 4 tackles. That's a lot of offensive linemen, 8, 9, 10. I think it's more likely they keep 9 or even 8. You have to keep 8 by rule. That's a collectively bargain thing because the Players Association doesn't want offensive line overstrained. So I think the only place on offense you can gain spots is on the offensive line. You come down from 10 to 9 or even 8. I would think 9. So there's one spot that could get you a wide receiver or that could get you something on defense. So I think you can get a spot on the offensive line. You can get a spot at quarterback. You can get a spot on the defensive line. They had 5 outside linebackers. I think 5 outside linebackers is tough right now. Key suspended, so he's not going to count at the beginning of the season. You got Landry. You've got Jalen Harrell. You've got Shane Ray. You've got Weaver. And who else after that? I mean, that's 4 right now. Tough to find a 5th. I think you got to go waiver wire. They had 4 inside linebackers, right now, you've got Murray, you've got Gibbons, you've got Campbell, Otis Reese, probably he was making some plays, and he is clearly the backup to Murray. So there's 4. Cornerbacks 4, safeties 5. I think they'd have 9 defensive backs, right? Maybe you'd want 1 extra there. I don't know. But that's the roster number talk. I'm coming back to comments here to see if anybody's got anything good at that. It can't be a tight end, Esco. You can't go into a game with 2 tight ends. You get one hurt, and you got Stonehouse should be ready to go, Banksy, on opening day, and maybe he punts once in the finale at New Orleans. I mean, the expanded practice squad, Audrey, with a question, good question here. How much do I think the expanded practice squad numbers will help develop more players? I mean, it's been expanded for several years now. And so you look at I can't remember, Coburn and Bohannon might have both come directly to the roster last year. But the Titans at the end of the year had guys like Garrett Wallow and JoJo Doman were on their roster, who are not NFL caliber players, but they had spent some time on the practice squad learning the system and getting coached up so that they were at least on some level serviceable when the Titans lost so many players that they needed help. So I think it serves its function in that. And, the teams really do look at all these guys like they're effectively part of the roster to have them ready and able to be called up at any time. So, I don't think Mason Kinsey's making it, but he's been on that practice squad for a hell of a long time, and he's a much better football player now than he was. I just don't think he's gotten good enough. Jeff wants to know my thoughts on the cornerbacks. Yet to see the full complement of starters. How big of a drop-off is there, and does it drastically change how the Titans scheme the pass rush? All right, the cornerbacks after Snead and Awuzie, outside, Brownlee is excellent. Brownlee is excellent. And then we would go Avery. Now they use McCreary outside sometimes because they can go inside. They could go inside with Brownlee. They could go inside with Garrar, though Garrar has been pretty quiet. They could go inside with Molden, who's available now. They can be in that big nickel with Jamal Adams. After Brownlee, Avery, I know people don't like, but I think he's a feisty competitor who they do like. After that, it starts to take a bad turn. Let's see if I'm forgetting anybody here. Farley, to me, is out of the mix and wasn't going to be there anyway. I mentioned Tay Gowan and Robert Javier, who are both terrible. Shy Carter is a safety. Oh, Gabe Judy Lowley. All right. So Brownlee, Gabe Judy Lowley, to me, is right there with Avery. I think ahead of Avery. So you're 4 deep outside to me. You've got the 2 starters in Snead and Cheeto, and you've got Brownlee and Gabe Judy Lowley, and then Avery. Those would be the 5 outside cornerbacks to me. And then Brownlee could go inside if you needed, if something happened to McCreary, and Molden could be there. So I feel pretty good about that group of cornerbacks beyond the starters. Nick wants to know how to get on that all-22. You got to get on the waiting list. Send me an email at pkuharsky@gmail.com, pkuharsky@gmail.com. The problem here, Kane feels like they should keep 7 wide receivers, especially with 2 older wide receivers being such a focal point in our offense. I think they need to get a wide receiver from somewhere else, an outside guy to put on the practice squad and develop. Bryce Oliver has had a nice camp. He's a good 3rd-string receiver. I don't know if he can do anything, first string. He's got a nice chemistry with Malik. And he's been outside. So maybe he's a practice squad guy they could try to develop into an outside guy. We'll have to see about that. Let's finish up some of these voicemails, which I see people are coming around on. Here's Lee.
This is Lee Jordan. Why hasn't the team addressed the crisis at edge/outside linebacker? Thank you.
Lee, I think this is top of mind for a lot of people. And it is a crisis in that the guys they could put in this spot, even when Key is active, are not quite sufficient. Take Key out of it for a suspension. You're talking Rashad Weaver. You're talking Jalen Harrell. You're talking Shane Ray. Not a good crop. Look, Carl Lawson's out there. He visited with the Cowboys. He didn't get signed. Tyus Bowser's out there. These two guys had some injury issues. The whole league's ignoring them. I presume there's still some health questions for the two of them. Ngakoue is all about sacks. He's not interested in defending the run. He's going to be on the field for plays occasionally where there's a run. And I think he hurts himself there. Charles Harris is a guy Mike Herndon brought up. He wrote a piece 2-3 weeks ago. People should look back at it, paulkuharsky.com, about the available options out there right after I reported on Key's pending suspension. Charles Harris in 2021 had 7.5 sacks for Detroit. Last 2 years, not nearly as impactful. I know people are very curious about Hassan Reddick. The Jets have come out and said they're not going to trade him. The Jets, as only the Jets can, bungle this thing where they trade for a guy they know who wants a new contract, trade for him without getting the contract done. Now he's upset and he's holding out. Titans can't give up picks for Hassan Reddick. And you have to be a little concerned with Hassan Reddick, who's a good player, but he's gone from Arizona to Carolina to Philadelphia to New York. He's bounced around a lot. And a productive guy like that, people, you would think a team would want to hold on to him. Shaq Lawson's out there. Justin Houston's old. Marcus Golden's old. And look, this defense has a hole at that spot. Last year's defense had holes all over the place. This team's done a pretty good job. There's some age and injury questions, but this team's done a pretty good job of patching things. If I told you last year there was only going to be one spot in the starting lineup that was a real concern in 2024, I think it would have been like, wow, they will have done a pretty good job. So, I think that it's insufficient at that edge spot. But if Simmons and Sweat are giving the middle push and disruption that we expect, if Harold Landry is doing his thing, if they blitz the way that we think they will under Leonard Wilson, and the coverage holds up the way it should with the personnel they have, it can be a pretty good defense with one spot that's not very good. And so maybe it's not as big a deal in the long run, especially if they stay healthy elsewhere. So we shall see. I'll take a couple more questions out of this, and I've got one more voicemail. Tall Texan, logical question. When did defensive ends start becoming called outside linebackers? Landry is a defensive end, per your knowledge. Well, he's not. When the Titans became a 3-4, those guys who line up like defensive ends, it's really a 5-man front. But in the 5-man front, those linebackers, stand up a lot. They're not in a 3-point stance all of the time. And they work with the outside linebacker coach. They're not with the defensive line coach. It's a different position. They sometimes drop into coverage. We don't like to see that with Landry, but they do it sometimes because they don't want the offense to know who exactly is rushing from where all the time. Landry does occasionally bounce and rush from the interior through one of the gaps as opposed to around the corner. And so Danico Autry, even, who seemed to be very much an end, was an outside linebacker by definition, if you define it by who does he meet with, because he met with Ryan Crow, the outside linebacker coach, not with Terrell Williams, the defensive line coach. So the Titans, in a large fashion, considered Danico Autry, who could play defensive tackle and did play some defensive tackle as well as defensive end, but was at his most, I don't know, he was impactful because he was so diverse. But when it came to the important stuff, the classroom studiousness, the classroom study, he was studying with the outside linebackers. So if you're playing a 5-man front, those two outside guys are technically outside linebackers. Though it's more and more blurred. I'll concede that for sure. Trey is asking for merch, which I think would probably be a while since I did the Don't Block the Box stuff not too long ago, and complimenting the new look of the site, which I really appreciate. 4 corners seems low. I said 5. McCreary and Sneed and Awuzie, and then Brownlee and Gabe Judy Lawley. DG's asking who would be the offensive vocal guys, the Jeff or the Key. Kinsey seems to fit the mold. Kinsey's not going to be on the roster. You know, a practice squad guy to be the vocal guy. I mean, even if Kinsey's on the roster, he's the 7th wide receiver. The 7th wide receiver can't be the vocal guy on offense. Josh Wiley's going to be a pretty vocal guy, and things are still being figured out. I think Ridley's got it in him, so we'll see. It's not going to be the 7th wide receiver. Harold's been pretty good. Logan Grady asks about Harold and Williams. Harold as the outside linebacker has gotten a lot of praise from Brian Callahan, and Williams, safety converting to inside linebacker, has shown up. He showed up a little bit in the game. Big hitter, see ball, go get ball, but still has a lot of growth to do. James asks, is Molden going to be slot? Well, McCreary is a slot. I wrote a piece about this. You should go read it, about the Titans' potential to overpackage with all of the guys they have now. I mean, Molden is kind of a backup to a lot of positions, and there could be certain packages where they like him as a nickel or a dime, but McCreary's a dime. McCreary's a nickel ahead of him. He could be the dime in some situations, but Adams is the dime ahead of him in some situations. Adams is the big nickel ahead of him. So he's kind of a floater, a utility infielder, if you will. I don't think there's any chance they see if Corey Davis has anything left. I don't understand why fans so much want washed up Titans. Logan Grady asks, if I could go back to 104.5 and have the midday 180 back, but I either had to have Clay or Stillman as my co-host, what do I do? Well, it wouldn't be the midday 180. The midday 180 is me and Chad and Jonathan. So it would not be called the midday 180. If I could have a show on the zone right now with Stillman or Clay, I'm not sure that's the place for me right now. And I have no interest in talking politics with Clay or with his politics. Lawson visited the Cowboys. I do not believe he signed with the Cowboys. I could be wrong. Chase asks about Shane Ray. How has Shane Ray looked? Has he done anything? Is he athletic? I just can't imagine a player at any position sitting out 5, almost 6 years and being productive in any way. He shows up, he flashes, but again, I too would be reluctant to be reliant on a player who, hasn't taken a snap in 5 years. That is a lot. Who benefits from losing Marlon Davidson? Well, all of the other guys who are in the depth competition on the defensive line, Bohannon, McClendon, and maybe Isaiah Eiton, though I think they got to go down to 6 defensive linemen unless they're bringing somebody in. Eiton is strong. I wrote about his reps in a tweet the other day from one-on-ones, but I think he's got to be a practice squad kind of guy. Trey's asking, what are the chances Key's suspension gets reduced or overturned? I can't pretend to know, but PED suspensions historically stick. And I think there's very few that have been changed. And people are thinking that that's what's going to happen because it hasn't been announced. But I think that's I think it's highly unlikely. But again, that's not reporting. Let's get to our last voicemail. And again, members, get the number. I've sent it to you in a text last week. It's on the private Facebook site. And I encourage you to leave a message. Here's Marcos.
Hey, Paul, it's Marcos. I'm curious about your thoughts with the regime change. If you can recall what your feelings were when Mike Vrabel first took the job and how that transpired, and now going into a new regime with Callahan, and how you think that's going to go, where your hate space is. I'm kind of curious about that. You're going to hear. Thank you.
Well, look, when Vrabel took over, everybody was excited. Clean slate, new thing. He had a lot more swagger than Malarkey. It was going to be different. Malarkey had 2 old coordinators. You respected LeBeau, who changed with the times, but Terry Robisky was not an inventive offensive coordinator. He's stuck in the Stone Age. And Matt LaFleur came in. He was a candidate for the head coaching job, and the Titans got him as a coordinator. That was a big win. And LaFleur was one of these guys who was, worked at the right hand of McVay, which was a big deal. There's a lot of excitement. He inherited a much better team than Callahan inherited, a 9-7 playoff team. Vrabel was a personal guy, but a hard ass. And so I think the vibe was positive around that team, and there were big expectations. They wound up going 9-7, missing the playoffs. I think that was the year that Marcus didn't play in the season finale with the neck question against the Colts. So now the new regime always has a honeymoon period, right? There's some stuff that's gone on in this training camp that Vrabel would have gotten killed for. You got Hopkins and Awuzie injuries, and you got Sadiq Charles quitting. If that happened, during later Vrabel, he would have got destroyed for that. And under the Callahan honeymoon, no fans are raising a stink about it. Callahan's opposite Vrabel in some ways. He's not a hard ass coach. I think, I've written about players feeling less stress and generally happier and more empowered. He's certainly more media friendly, which and more forward with information, certainly on injuries, which is something we haven't seen before. He's inheriting a worse team with a lot more change. And so we'll see. And so I don't like to get caught up in the vibe question much, but I've written a good deal about the vibe, that story about stress, the story about relentless and resilient as opposed to full tilt, which is a change in the messaging, which I think tells you a lot about what's important to a coach and how the players take to it. So now it's about results, right? Not just about wins and losses, though that's the most important thing, but results of his scheme and results of decisions he's involved in who they keep and who they put where on the field. And so that all remains to be seen. And so that's a good place to leave it. LaFleur and Zach Taylor, Deej says, both struggled year one. Callahan may take a year or two to settle in. Well, Zach Taylor didn't have Joe Burrow in his first year, and we don't know for sure what Will Levis is going to be. But the Titans are optimistic. They already have their quarterback. It's not going to be Joe Burrow, but they're optimistic they have the guy that they're going to build around, while the Bengals had to wait a year. And LaFleur obviously inherited a good situation, whether he got good results or not. Check out the voicemail line. Leave me a message at any time. Put it in your phone book. And when you think, hey, I wonder, this would be a good thing to hear about on the podcast, you can leave me a message. I'll get you on here like I did for a lot of people today. Enjoyed talking with you. Check out the new paulkuharsky.com, redesigned. You'll hear from Blake Bedingfield on Sunday about the game, Mike Herndon next week with his always detailed analysis, and plenty from me, a huge feature on Denard Wilson's background coming up. Don't block the box. Be sure to lock your locks. Have a great weekend, everybody. Cheers.